voice of UCF. Marc Daniels joins us, as he's done before. We always love the time with him on 365 Sports with Paul Craig, and I'm David Smoak. Marc, thank you very much for your time. It seemed like, I know the East Carolina game was a disappointment, but it seems like that UCF's got a pretty good thing going right now.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's been a good couple of weeks for UCF. That ECU game, was not ideal. Things didn't go the way you wanted. I think they may be a better football team than people have thought. They may go on to win 8-9 games this year. But then UCF bounced back with its most impressive game, a win against Cincinnati, a hard-fought game at home, and then went on the road against a talented Memphis team and overcame some things in that football game to win and set themselves up for what was thought to be a couple of years ago. Say UCF Tulane is a big game, but it is a huge football game in the American coming up on Saturday with both teams now ranked in the winter, moving atop of the conference standings. So things are good, but there's always the next big game coming up on Saturday.
Were there nerves around the team when Mikey Keene had to come in for John Rice Plumlee? Because it doesn't seem like he was bothered by any of that. Led them to the win against Cincinnati, played really well again last week, Mark, and had the win of the bowl game, of course, last year as well.
He's played his six best quarters of football at UCF. Mikey last year was put in a tough spot as a true freshman, replacing Dylan Gabriel, who went down at the end of that Louisville football game and really had to go through a season of learning on the fly. But he won his teammates over with his performance. And Gus Malzahn said many times, after the season started, that Mikey was right there to battle with John Rice Plumlee. Could have gone either way. And he's been great in preparing week to week, and then his number was called in that end of the second quarter, second half against Cincinnati. He made some huge plays in what was a season-saving win for UCF. Now you go on the road, and his numbers weren't 350 yards, 5 touchdowns, but he made some really big passes at key moments and putting the ball in the right spot. Kobe Hudson, an Auburn transfer, has really elevated his game. He had a couple of great catches and then a beautiful pass to Javon Baker, an Alabama transfer, in the back corner of the end zone when UCF needed it. And that huddle, we don't huddle anymore, but that huddle for the most part has great respect for Mikey. So with the change, it wasn't like, oh boy, it was like, hey, let's go with Mikey. And he's been razor sharp. Gus Malzahn again said today, he'll see as the week progresses and he'll make the decision he feels gives the team the best chance to win. He knows he's got a couple of quarterbacks that certainly when they're on can really help UCF win football games.
Have you seen Gus just further settling in? I mean, I know he's not brand new at this point, but just, going through a little bit of adversity a couple of times this season, guiding this team, now getting back to a bowl game, dealing with quarterback injuries. Just how much more comfortable do you sense that he is, and how's this program continuing to grow around him?
Second year, things are going to be easier. You're comfortable with things. You know where everything is, and more of his fingerprints are on this roster. We all know that rosters go through so much change with the transfer portal, players and coming and going, but I think Gus feels like, this is still his team that he's building. It may not be complete, but it's much more of his type of style. Gus has always emphasized he needs a balanced offensive attack to run and throw the ball. Well, he's backed it up this year. UCF's top 10 in rushing, and as far as total offense, top 10. And he is committed to run the football, set it up to throw. I think Gus is having fun because he's back calling plays. He's in charge of his offense. No one's telling him who his coordinator should be. No one's telling him what plays to run. And I think he's having fun with that. He also realizes we find ourselves in a lot of tough football games, and you've got to make some adjustments along the way. UCF's also made great improvements on defense this year. That's been a big part of their growth. So I think he's doing a couple of things. One, he knows he's got a team now with a chance to win a conference championship. He knows what's at stake if they can do that. At the same time, guys still trying to build and plan your roster for the change next year where, he knows UCF has to elevate its game even more. So I think he's more comfortable in year 2, but always planning for year 3. He's done a great job recruiting thus far. He knows that UCF's after a different caliber of recruit, and in this state, there's a lot of talent to go get. So all in all, the CEO of UCF football, I think, has done a really good job as we're in the thick of things in year 2.
Do you think that he's just in a really nice, peaceful spot right now compared to the ups and downs of Auburn?
I think I've got to know Gus a little bit over the last 2 years, and I pick and choose my moments where I ask questions that I know kind of are, And, have I asked him off air about what he thinks was happening at Auburn? Sure. I'll keep that answer between us, but you guys can kind of guess as he watches from a distance. Look, Auburn, other jobs in the SEC, it's more than just being a football coach. It's dealing with the politics around it. It may be, no different than some places in the Big 12. I don't know if it's as many in the American, But we all know sometimes the wannabe GMs will play a role. I think Gus has welcomed the chance to go back and be a football coach without a bunch of text messages suggesting this play or this guy to be hired or things like that. So he's enjoying his time at UCF a lot. He certainly has an eye. Look, Cadillac Williams is somebody special to him. He wishes him well at Auburn, and Gus has many friends back there. Not speaking for his wife, Christy, and himself, but I think Gus enjoys being at UCF in Orlando right now versus maybe some other place in Alabama.
Mark, what does it feel like for the fan base to know that UCF has grown so much over the last couple of years that they'll now be making more media revenue than Florida State and Miami will?
It's a nice smile for a lot of different reasons. Look, guys, the frustrating thing that UCF fans had for years was that they couldn't win their way into a big league, or could they? The thought was, hey, there's no guarantee. If you do this, you get an invite to a bigger league and you get all that media money. But there's no question the success in 2017, 18, 19, and 20 built a brand. And the best example I can give is, look, we lost to ECU, and they beat us pretty bad. Then the next week we beat Cincinnati, and with 2 losses, we got ranked in the college football playoff rankings. I'm not saying we didn't deserve it, but the brand growth, I think, played a factor in that, where now you see that logo and it's like, oh, who are those guys? So I think that plays a role in it. And then, to be a part of a league where, and you guys have, I know, enjoyed following the story, where everybody wrote the Big 12 off, and plenty of people said they'll end up making maybe $10, $15 million, and to have the deal be reported what it is, it's kind of a, wow, you all were wrong. And wherever, the number ends up, and maybe the Pac-12 might be a little bit more, it might be around the same, and the ACC, however they do their math, it may be, less. Look, the bottom line is the Big 12 did more than just survive. It solidified its place as a conference that plays great football, clearly great basketball, and from a monetary standpoint of that media deal, ended up doing far better than people thought. For UCF, look, it's money that they had never dreamed about, even if it's 30, 35, 40 million. In the American, which has been a good league for UCF, you were hoping to get 7. And guys, do the math over the course of a decade. $70 million versus potentially $250 million or $500 million. You can spend things and compete at a different level where you've tried to piecemeal things along the way, which is what UCF has done in recent years.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see what they and the others can do with that boost, no doubt about it. Mark, your thoughts on, I know it's still early in the week, but your thoughts on what you've seen from Willie Fritz in Tulane?
He's such a good coach. He's done a really good job. Last year they were better than the record. They had a bunch of injuries last year. Michael Pratt's a Florida kid, a quarterback. He's really good. They've got 2 dynamic running backs, and their defense is really good and tough, and they smother you on first and second down to put you in uncomfortable third down positions. UCF's national numbers on defense are better than Tulane, but Tulane's in-conference defense has been the best. I do think it comes down to some basic things. The team that can be successful running the football, I think, has the best chance. But for UCF, you go on the road, you've got to protect the ball to not make turnovers. And if you do that, give yourself a chance to win. I'll be curious how Tulane handles the next big game environment for them, even though they're at home, a bigger spotlight on them as you get later in the season. Look, if they win, they're in a real great spot where even a possible loss to Cincinnati the final week would not hurt them to play in the conference championship game. UCF does not have that luxury. If the Knights win out, then they'll play in the conference championship game, but actually host it. But it's interesting to see how Tulane handles that next big pressure situation. And look, that's the great thing about being in a conference race is UCF finds itself with Cincinnati and Tulane in the American, and clearly the crazy race that's happening in the Big 12. I've said this, and one of the many things that I'm excited about the Big 12 is how competitive the league is, where instead of having top-heavy dominance, you go in November and you got 4 or 5 games every week that matter for who can make a conference championship game. That's great. That's exciting. That's fun. That's why TV paid big money for it.
Mark, I know that there are, a couple hours away from you, but I'm curious on the UCF perspective on what's gone on at USF with Jeff Scott being let go. Looks like they are trying to maybe copy the UCF plan of action because they're building new facilities on campus. They're doing all that. But how did UCF make that turn and USF did not follow them when they decided to let's take a jump and try to be big time?
Well, guys, you got to go back. They were in the best position of all. They were ahead of UCF and got into the Big East. And, they remind you where they were ranked in 2007, but that was a long time ago. And I think what happened, and again, some may know the story, their then president did everything she could to block UCF from a football-only invite to the Big East. She successfully campaigned and got the votes to block it, and UCF never forgets that. And UCF found enough people to buy into the vision that, if we build a facility, and UCF is the first indoor facility in the state of Florida, build an on-campus stadium, and everybody said you can't do it, won't be able to do it, and then did it. And South Florida kind of laughed at UCF going, well, you're playing at a smaller stadium on campus, and we're playing where the Bucks play. Then you have to go win. And then UCF began to win in Conference USA. And then the American with South Florida was there. UCF kept on winning. But guys, the famous 2017 Black Friday football game, 49-42, UCF beat South Florida. That was the great game on ABC, watched by many. From that day forward, South Florida's gone 16-40. UCF had the undefeated season in 17, in 18, parlayed that into building a brand that had recognition. And South Florida could never get it right when Charlie Strong left. And they woke up today and said, wait, what happened? All of a sudden, UCF is selling out its football stadium. It's playing in big games and playing in big bowl games and winning conference championships. And South Florida is like, what happened? They've now committed themselves to building a facility. The on-campus facility is under construction. The stadium, I'm not knocking. It's an idea that right now the price tag is $350, $400 million with no financing plan. I don't know where that's going to go. And the reality is that UCF got the invite to the Big 12. You guys know the reported details of that contract that doesn't call for additional money if it's not a P5 school. I don't know if you're a G5 school where you think that invite may go to the big league anytime soon. So that's kind of where things stood. UCF invested in itself years ago. South Florida didn't think they needed to. And lo and behold, it was the right move by UCF, but you had to go win. And UCF did do that. South Florida had it going for a little bit. But again, from that famous game in 2017, they've gone 16-40, and we'll go find a new coach and kind of commit to the next stage in what's going to be a different look American, where the media money's not going to be as good as it is now, and the challenges are going to be tougher, I think, to now raise money for a stadium when you've had the struggling season. There's resources in place that it can be successful. It's taken less than 24 hours for plenty of rumors of guys like John Gruden's name to pop up. Deion Sanders' name to be thrown around, and there'll be plenty of other names that people will come up with. In the end, they'll hire somebody. It can be a good job. It's a great recruiting area. And if they are committed to building those facilities, then somebody has a chance to do quite well. For UCF, they just were the right place, right time to be successful, and they benefited from that versus the school that had an advantage that lost it.
I think UCF's defensive coordinator should be coach of the year to hold SMU to 19 points.
How about that? Was that unbelievable?
Yeah.
I mean, we were on the bus after the victory at Memphis, driving to the airport. Like, wait, what is that? 56.5. And Tanner Mordecai's good, and he flinged it all over the place. And wow, what a football game! And the pinball numbers. I mean, we're getting set to do basketball here. I know Baylor tipped off today, and that's a basketball score right there. But it shows you again, SMU's got players and they can throw it, and not surprised by the offense, surprised by that score there, eye-popping, and wow, what a score. Yep.
Hey, Mark, thank you very much for your time. Voice of UCF, we've gotten to know him with a lot of what was going on last fall, a year ago, when the Big 12 got up off the campus after losing Texas and Oklahoma eventually, in UCF, Marc Daniels, a lot of great guys that we've had on who cover or are part of UCF football. We appreciate his time. All right. We will have Kendall Cow today at